Hey, Grip Boy here. Hey, listen, this is a series of videos that will show you how in the middle of 2025, you can build a very durable quadcopter, both with easy to find parts, as well as something that is fully remote ID and FAA compliant. By the way, if you are having trouble finding these parts, please check out my site at searchfpv.com. Now, on to the videos. All right, so now we are on to the O4 air unit. No, by the way, just while I had the camera turned off, you saw how crappy that one solder joint on the positive lead was. Well, take a look at that. Isn't that much nicer? So I probably should have done this on the camera, but all I did was I just put a little bit of, hot or some solder. So I used a wet solder tip, held that in place, and I just held it there and just let that flow. And look how nicely that turned out, just letting that thing flow. Very nice. So now the next thing is we're going to do the O4 air unit. Here we go. And not fully install it, right? Because we still got antennas, we got everything else. The reason I'm going to start here is that the camera cable here, I like to have this under all the electronics. So before I start building up, it'll be a lot easier to do this while I'm doing that. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and jiggle that loose. We're going to get this camera cable up under that ESC as well as this. We're going to feed that under these motor wires. There we go. So now we got the camera wire you can see going under the ESC. We will put the ESC back down. And there we go. Now we're in a good position to mount this. Now I've sourced my own screws. I know that the DJI O4 kit comes with these, but quite honestly, I like these better because these are like small cap head screws. So we're going to go ahead and use those. So let me grab my small broken little driver. Here we go. And I am also going to use a little Loctite. Now, the mechanics, don't use the red stuff. All right. The red stuff, you're never going to get that off. Use the blue stuff. It's the runny yuck crap stuff. So use this, all right? And so here we go. This will kind of just sort of flow on its own. Now you don't need a lot, just enough to see get the threads wet there. Here we go. There we go. And of course, you don't want to do those too tight because, again, like most of these smaller size thread screws, they're super easy to strip. So that's again another reason why I really like using the thread locker on these, because I know that you don't really have to have them super tight on there for them to actually go ahead and bind and then lock up. So okay, so next one goes right there. And of course, as always, be very careful that you don't get something that's plastic. You don't want to get thread locker on anything that's plastic, like props or something else, because this will melt plastic, and that's a bummer. Thankfully, the DJI O4 outer case is, I guess it's aluminum, right? So don't have to worry about thread locker melting that, or the carbon for that fact. All right. That's the little dog there. Now, did I have to do all 4 screws? No, of course not. But, more in this case is better. You don't want this thing flying off mid-flight and then you not knowing where you're going. There we go. All right, and just like that, Our O4 is mounted. You know what? Let's go ahead and get the rest of these standoffs on here. That seems like a logical place to be now. So yeah, we'll do that, because this will also enable us to then mount the camera up front so we can kind of see what we're dealing with. Plus, not to mention the fact that these standoffs, I'm going to be using one over here to hold the capacitor, like I said earlier, and you'll see how that works with some of this extra motor wire. Here we go. There we go. So that hole there. That's it. And yeah, I decided to run the motor wires on the outside, I think. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and run them on the outside. Cool. I mean, well, let's see here. I could also run them on the inside. Decisions, right? There we are. Cool. These out of the way. Okay. So now from here in the standoffs, let's see, we're gonna go ahead and put these 3D printer mounts that I just signed. And by the way, I guess I'll put a link to my Thingaverse page. Okay, and here we are finishing this off. By the way, I ended up just taking these standoffs off, just only so that I could get to these screws a lot easier. I discovered I didn't really have that problem before, but you know, unfortunately, when you can't see very well and you are lacking certain tools because you keep breaking them, you do what you do. So yeah, moving parts, getting them out of the way definitely worked, but now at least I've got the camera on its mount. We won't even talk about the last 15 minutes that I spent looking for a screw that went flying on the floor, because that's not important, is it? What's important is that we get this sucker together. All right, so here we go. Down. Boom. I know everything's not cross-threaded. Got that set, what, at about 20 degrees right now, which is okay. At least that should be for where I'm going to fly. I might go 25 or 30. I think the camera mount, the GoPro mount I have is set at 25, so that'll probably be where I go. But all right, now that we got that done, we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just take a quick loop-de-loop of the camera cable there underneath the ESC, just to kind of like take up some of the excess. There we go, we'll throw that down. Okay, I guess I've made the executive decision that the motor wires are definitely, oops, except that one, they're definitely going on the outside of these standoffs. There we go. Perfect. All right, there we go. Camera is mounted. O4 is mounted. And now, well, let's see. So I think the next thing will be to kind of get the flight controller situated, and then we'll start looking at getting that all taken care of. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna put this aside for right now. And what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna prep a couple of things that I'm gonna solder. One will be the receiver, and then the other one is going to be the capacitor. So now I'm gonna show you what we are going to do with these motor wires. So first of all, the legs that I'm gonna use, I don't need them to be this long. In fact, actually they don't need to be very long at all. So you're gonna see I'm gonna kind of snip these off relatively close to the thing. Because again, I really don't need the long legs because I'm going to be using the motor wires, leftover motor wire that I used. And so this is the way this is going to work. So here we go. All right, so the first step that I do here is with these legs and inside the wire here. So I actually kind of start the leg in the middle core of the wire here. And then I kind of twist the wire. And so the thing that I'm going for here is to actually get the leg of the capacitor up inside the insulation of the wire, kind of added to the core of the wire. Kind of just like that. There, see? All right, and kind of get them both situated. Now, am I done with this? No, of course not. Because as one might expect, we're certainly going to want to make sure that these stay. So this will involve a little bit of soldering, but just want to make sure that these are started. Forgive me for being a little blind. This does, there we go. So I'm twisting a little bit like that. And so basically what I've done now is I've given these guys some additional wire here. And, well, let's see here. Oh, there we go. That might be able to make it a little easier. And so let me grab this over here. I do like this little thing here. This is going to help hold this thing in place while I do what I'm about to do. So I'm kind of backing it off a little bit. So that they're a little bit exposed. And then with some flux, I'm going to get some flux in there, and the flux is also going to end up going down up inside the wire there. So let's see if we can do it like that. Maybe that'll help seal a little better. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to heat that up, and we're going to dribble some solder in there, and then that solder is going to wick down the wire some, and that's going to hold the whole thing in place. A little bit there. Okay, there's one side. Let's resituate this a little bit. I think that the stupid little vice, baby vice here is sort of getting in my way. There we go. Yes. Let's see if we can heat that up. There we go. Push it on there a little bit when it's hot. And did that burn my fingers? Yeah, a little bit. You know what? A little bit. But it wasn't too bad. But now, if I give these a good pull, you'll see that, yeah, that is not coming off for anything. And so now what I have done is I have successfully soldered wires to that. And so the nice thing is now the wires are flexible, so I can actually kind of run this along to anywhere I need. So here we got some good little shrink wrap. I'm gonna cut a couple pieces. Oops. Don't have to be very long, of course. No. Slide these all the way down. And not only does this cover up some bare exposed elements, but the shrink wrap will also help hold stuff in place. And I'll slide that all the way down there. I might have made this one a little too long, but that's okay. I match. All I need is just a little flame. Besides, who doesn't love the smell of a wooden match? Ah, there we go. And that is all together and ready to go. Fantastic. All right, the next will be the Crossfire receiver. I like to prep this. Now, on this particular flight controller, yes, it does come with plugs, and there is a plug I can go ahead and solder to the receiver and just plug it in. I'm not going to do that. So let me, from my Crossfire receiver, oh yeah, there's some shrink protection there too, which by the way, I'm not going to use. I'm actually going to use Kapton tape to wrap my receiver in. And we're going to grab the ends of these wires. We're going to tin them. So I'm actually grabbing the part that is already exposed. And I'm just going to tin that end. And then you'll see me tin the receiver. And then in the end, you'll actually see me kind of make use of the cross holes, or the through holes on the circuit board, just because that's kind of who I am. I kind of like that, and I like the additional strength in the ball ends. I feel that, you know, if you're all the way through and soldered through the through holes on the receiver, there's a lot less chance of one of those wires getting disconnected, as it were. So, okay, so whoops. Dirty my finger a little bit of flux on there. Let's go ahead and put those aside. Let's tin these wires really quick. Of course, there are 4 RXTX, a 5 volt and ground. All right, nice excessive blob of solder on my tip. That's good, because now I can use that to actually look at that nice shiny tip. Very nice. Okay, so now my wires are tin. We're gonna set those aside right there. Now let me grab the receiver. It should be in here somewhere. There we go. One thing to note, so and I should say that for modern Crossfire receivers, the ground is going to be the pad that has square on it. So see this square part here, that's going to be the ground. And then it's ground, 5 volt, and then RX and TX after that. So let me put this here. We'll go to the back side of this. Oops. We're gonna do it upside down. On the tip, just for some good heat transfer. Situated so my blind person can see, and away we go. Okay, perfect. All right. There we go. That is nicely tinned. Good source of solder on each one. Now, of course, I'm going to look at the other side just to remind myself which one is ground. And of course, ground is going to be the square one on the outside. So we're going to do that one first. And so when I do these through holes, so I'm going to grab the wire and grab the exposed part here. We're just going to apply heat on the edge so that the solder melts, and then we're going to poke the tinned wire right through the hole. Oops. Just like that. Yellow next. And so the reason I do yellow is instead of white. I know some people do the white here. I do yellow because in my mind, when these are all wrapped up, all said and done, I remember that the 3 color ones go together. And sometimes if you've twisted your wires around each other, it's kind of hard to remember or visualize where that is. But you know, if maintaining at least this level of consistency means that I remember the order of the wires, even if I have them twisted and don't remember. So, you know, since I'm doing the soldering, I can rely on the colors to actually mean what they need to mean. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now as you'll see, we'll take a quick look here. Now I have all of those done very nicely. Through holed right through, and you'll see that, you know, this also makes sure that, like, even if they're pulled sideways, those joints are not coming apart. That is going to stay, and that's really the way I'm gonna keep it. Okay, so the next thing I like to do on these builds is go ahead and just make a quick diagram on the computer so I know exactly what's getting soldered where. It's just nice to take this extra step, in my opinion, just to avoid mistakes. So the things that I am soldering to the flight controller will be the receiver. So let's do Crossfire RX. We'll find a picture of that. Go. Mode ID. All right, and just real quick so that we have a picture of the wires and how though, there we go, that's a good picture. All right, and then last but not least, we will go ahead and let's open up Paint. Okay, so we'll start with the, here we go, we'll start with the flight controller. So I just want to make sure. All right, here we go. So let's take a snip of this. Put this here. All right, then let's grab a picture of our Crossfire receiver. See if we can get a good picture of it. That's not bad. Right. And then finally, let's take a look at this guy here. Great. Okay. Let's see, I should be able to rotate that, right? Oops, here we go. Rotate. Right, there we go. That, perfect. All right, zoom in a little bit for us blind people. Now let us see the whole picture. So essentially, yeah, again, this is just going to be the things that we're going to solder to the flight controller. So this doesn't have to, you know, be absolutely perfect, but The one thing we're going to look for now, they actually are really nice on this, and they actually say, hey, put your receiver here. Hey, put your GPS over here. One thing that we're going to look for, and this is going to be for both the receiver and the GPS, both of them are 5 volt. You're going to want to look for, and you could see it here, there's a 4v5 pad, and that is on the receiver, so fantastic. There's also a 4v5 pad over here. And so what that means is those will be powered off of USB as well as powered off of the battery. It's really super handy to actually have any GPS receiver powered by that pad. So that way you can plug it into USB, your GPS will come up, and you'll be able to make sure that everything's working without having to plug a battery into the thing, which is very, very super handy for sure. All right, so we'll pick black, we'll pick our little tool here. I think that's a brush. Yeah. All right, so we're going to start wiring this up. There we go. So we're just going to go that way. There we go. This ground over to here. Yeah. That'll be the positive pad here. So we'll say plus. That is going to go to that 5V or 4V5 right there. All right. And then this is TX and then RX. And as you know, the peripherals TX goes to RX and RX goes to TX. So we made this one yellow. So this is gonna go this way. And that's gonna go here to R2. And then the last one is white. Well, since white is kind of stupid to draw on white, we're gonna use gray. And so that one's gonna come here. And that's going to go to T2, TX2. And so there we go. And if we need to, we could certainly also include a little note to ourselves that this is new art 2. All right, so now I got that. Now let's look at our receiver here. Same type of thing. So we're going to connect the red. Make sure we have our pen selected. There we go. And so this is going to go over to this 4v5 pad. Ground is going to go from here over to the ground pad. And then again, RX to TX and TX to RX. So we're going to take the yellow wire from RX. We're going to go over here to T6. And then finally, we'll take the gray RX, and that's going to go over here, or gray TX rather, and that's going to go over here to RX6. All right, perfect. So now if we actually take a little bit of a view of this, now we can actually see, and we got a little diagram we can follow. So now we know which pads we need to tin on the flight controller to get ready and prepped for this. And those are the peripherals we're soldering. And then, of course, some people are asking, well, wait a minute, what about your DJI O4? Absolutely right. But we are actually going to go ahead and just use the plug. And so, of course, the good news is with the plug on this thing right here, see where it says DJI, this DJI plug? That plug from the O4 air unit is going to go straight into this DJI plug. Solder free, everything will be wonderful and will work perfectly. So let's now get to more soldering. Looks like, okay, so looks like we've got these 4 pins here to tin, and then on this side, these 4 pins to tin. Okay, so those 4 in that corner, those 4 in this corner. Here we go. Start with these. Start with these 4 right here. All right, here we go. Perfect. Let's see, we're going to be laying And these 4 pads right there. There we go. So we got 10 on those, 10 on those, and now we are ready to start putting the rest of this thing together. So this is about where I start trying to figure out the final situation of stuff. So first thing I'm gonna look at is this capacitor. And remember, I put these wires on here, mostly because, you know, it's, as you can see, even here, like the camera gets a little bit in the way. And so since I can take advantage of this standoff, I'm actually going to mount the capacitor right here next to the standoff, and then I'm going to run these wires over here from the capacitor. Let's see if I can get my fingers out of the way so you can see that. But yeah, so I'm going to run them from over the capacitor, just solder them right there to that XT60. And then that way the capacitor will sit there. It's very close. In fact, it's probably the same distance it would be if it were soldered directly, and should do a pretty good job. So what I'm going to do actually to hold that in place is, again, I'm going to source some of my heat shrink tube. And again, check out Joshua's site. He has links to all this stuff. There we go. All right, then we'll take this heat shrink tube like this. The capacitor will go there. And this will just slide right down. Check that out, right there on that standoff. I think we can get that to slide down a little further. Yeah, there we go. There we go, right there. That's holding the capacitor right next to that standoff. And now, in fact, actually, I can even just pull that out. Just make sure you remember which is the negative side. In this case, I'm going to remind myself because the part that's already shining through, I'm going to remember is positive. So we'll make sure that goes to the positive terminal. And this one we'll make sure goes to the negative terminal. So it'll look something like that one there and that one there. And then now we can, okay. So I'm going to keep that there because I do want to make sure all the parts are in place as I piece this together. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at, it looks like, is let's go ahead and I'm going to get the ESC plug because that's the next thing the flight controller needs. All right, we're going to plug that in here. There we go. Boost this a little bit up. Let's see. So that's going to look like, that's going to plug in this way on the ESC. I'll pull this up so I can see the plug. There we go. Okay, that's plugged in. Oh, how about we try, I know, Eric, let's try mounting that the right way. There you go. All right. There you go. Okay, so that's everything plugged in. Now you can see that. That's being situated just fine. Okay. And the next thing we want to take a look at now, of course, is, well, let's take a look at the receiver. Here we go. Now, of course, we're going to wrap this in some Kapton tape when all is done. Plus, we got to put an antenna on it. I think so. There's 2 places I can put this receiver effectively. I can put it right on top of the air unit, and then it's just going to get wired right here. That might actually work pretty good. Definitely plenty of room here, and in fact, that will actually kind of make sure that it's good. So yeah, I'm thinking that's probably going to be good. So we'll twist these wires. Well, let's do that right now. Let's see what this looks like. We're going to twist these wires now. All right, that's going to kind of just hang out right there. right, then we'll probably use some two-sided sticky tape to hold this down. Let's see, then the antenna is going to go out this way. That'll go here. The next part that I want to look at is going to be this plug. Now, this is the plug that goes to the GPS. GPS unit's going to be hanging out here. This plug is going to go over here. Now, I try to, if I can, not run electronic, or not run wires rather over the electronics. I like to run these things between. So what this is probably going to look like is I'm going to run it underneath the flight controller like that. We'll have our wires here. Mount this sucker right there. Let's see. Let's make sure I can get my hands on those. There we go. Oh yeah, see, we've got plenty of length here because these are going to get wrapped around and soldered there. And then this will go to our GPS, aka remote ID and all that good stuff. So that looks like what this thing is going to look like in the end. So let's go ahead and get the rest of the other standoffs on. We're gonna take apart this so we can pull antennas off so we can get the TPU on the back mounted up. And so now we're gonna do the final assembly phase. First, I'm gonna start with this back mount here. This is where, of course, the DJI antennas are gonna go down. There is room for the Immortal T here to be held on to, and of course the GPS/remote ID module will hang out in here. So first thing we got to do is we need to go ahead and remove the cover off of the O4 air unit here so that we can then remove the antennas. Here we go. Yes, we got the little magnetic stand right there. All right. There we go. Okay. Cover sign. Let's go ahead and release our antennas off of there. There's one. There's two. All right, we're gonna feed these guys both down and kind of want to feed them in a way so that the UFL is facing kind of down the way I'd want it to be. So here we go. We'll feed that guy down in here. Come on. This is always a little tricky. There we go. All right. Okay, there you can see it. He's coming out. All right. Now I'll get the other antenna. It's definitely fun when you start having both of them coming down in here. So here we go. Down we go. Roll him around. There we go. All right. So let's see, make sure he's coming like that. And we'll get these about the same length. There we go. Perfect. All right, so those are going to get reattached there. Let's now work on the Immortal T antenna. I say through the hole. There we go. There's our Immortal T. All right, now I get to do a little bendy twisty with this. I'll go into there. There we are. And I made it so that this mounts so that it'll, like you see, there's these two ridges. So these will actually kind of like slide on right over the top of that. And thankfully, TPU is very bendy, as are Immortal T antennas. We'll put him through there. There we go. There we are. All right, that should pop on, and there we go. All All right, and there we are. Now we've got that. We have our Model T on there. Here's the plug for that, and then the 2 plugs for the DJI. So perfect. So at this point, I'm actually pretty comfortable with going ahead and let's remount these antennas to the air unit so they can be held in place. Click that, doesn't feel like, oh, that feels right. All right, those are on there. Go ahead and we will put the screws back in. And these do have some of that blue Loctite on there, so you don't have to really reef them down. And again, with these small screws, I really recommend you don't reef it down because you will strip something, and again, you'll end up questioning some of your life choices that brought you here. There we go. All right, look at that. Then you're gonna notice, well, shoot, you know, look at this. This is gonna be very difficult. Here's one trick that I like to do. So if you actually take this and twirl it around once, it kind of puts sort of a natural bend, and look at that. That thing will just set nice and perfectly on the end, just like that. You're not over bending stuff, and it's just kind of got a natural curl, and away we go. So let me grab these 2 smaller standoffs. These are for the rear of the frame, and they will go in here. There we go. There we go. All right, great. And now we will grab some of the smaller countersink screws. A couple of these for each standoff. Set that one right there. Okay. And then, as you can tell by the mess on my desk, I do like to reseal those bags so I don't end up losing something if I can help it. All right, now, here we go. Okay. All right, look at that. Look at that. Doesn't that look nice? I think so. All right, now the next thing I'm going to want to do is the DJI plug. That is actually going to go up here to the front of the flight controller. Oh, wait a minute, does it? It goes up to the front of the flight controller. Yep. And this goes right here to this plug. There we go. Let's give this some good turns. They definitely give you plenty of plug, don't they? All right, let's get some more on the end over on this end. Here we go. All right, good deal. This will come back here and plug right into the O4. All right, hey, we're making some progress. We'll try to make sure that as we're laying this cable down, put it between the motor wires, make sure it's got room. I'm gonna always do a little, whoops, slam. A little testy fit here, there we go, yep. You can still see that. Not 100% happy with that. Oh, bummer. Let's see, maybe. Sometimes you gotta play with these fitments so that they go in the right spot. Okay, that works out pretty good, actually. There we go. All right, there's a little bit of slack up there, but that's okay. All right, and then the next one is gonna be this long sucker. So let's see. Not a problem. That's why these things screw together, right? Now I'm gonna loosen this one just a little bit so I can because all I really need to do is swivel that there. All right. Okay, there we go. So now, we don't need that, but yeah, so now we can just take this, we can stick it right where we wanted it to go. Look at that. All right. Now let's try not to let it drop all the way through. Wouldn't that be a bummer? Huh. Okay, just for now, I'm gonna kind of direct it, there we go, down to the tray. That way I know it's not gonna just accidentally whoops and fall out. That would be a bummer. And we will tighten this again. There we go. Perfect. Out there we go. And then these wires, whoops, don't pull it through, dummy. So these wires are going to go up this way and underneath the flight controller. And one thing I don't like about this SpeedyBee remote ID thing is that these wires, that's not even rubber insulation. This is like plastic. And I'm always sure that they are going to rub, and, you know, especially with some vibration, which, you know, let's face it, our quads are full of vibration. So I'm going to take the smallest heat shrink tube I have. I'm going to kind of gently slide this. There we go, coming out the other end there. And I'm going to use 2 of these so that I know I've got enough coverage. But these are actually holding the wires nice and tightly together, which is certainly nice. And it will kind of keep them together and protect them, again, from getting vibrations rubbing off the insulation or anything else. Because, of course, you know, we don't want to lose our remote ID, right? And actually, that's not even why I like the thing. I mean, yes, we should be compliant as much as possible, but GPS is a nice thing. All right, how about that? Okay, so now we've got those. And so these are also going to go underneath the flight controller like that. Looks like we're going to be running this DJI cable as close to the edge as we can. That seems to be giving it. Look at that. Boom. There we are. We can have just enough. Actually, we can give this thing a little bit more. There we go. And see, these wires, they're going to come back around and they're going to hook right there to the flight controller. And so that's perfect. And then this, of course, is going to plug into our remote ID module on the end. All right. So far, this looks like it's coming together pretty nicely.